So this is the brand new Galaxy S24. And this is the Galaxy S24 Ultra. From the outside, they look pretty much identical to the Galaxy S23 series. In fact, I would generalize the new Galaxy S24 lineup as the Galaxy S23 series with AI sprinkled on top of the hardware. I think this year we're going to start to see a lot of smartphone manufacturers and even laptop manufacturers incorporate AI-based features into their products to enhance the user experience. Particularly, a lot of them are productivity focused and towards, creators as well. But we're living in an interesting era where AI is, it's growing exponentially and it's being integrated into pretty much every single consumer electronic device that's out there. I mean, we're starting to see them integrated into fridges and dishwashers and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know. I want to hear you guys and what you guys feel about that. But anyways, we've got 3 new phones from Samsung, and I'm going to kick things off with the S24 and the S24 Plus. So from a hardware standpoint, both these phones rock the exact same design language as the previous generation with a few minor tweaks to the aesthetics. So they now feature sharp edges all around. They're trying to replicate the iPhone aesthetics. Personally, I prefer flat edges because it's just easier to hold them in the hand. I'm particularly excited about the Galaxy S24 because it's super compact, and if you're someone with small hands, you're particularly going to love the form factor of the S24 because it's easy to operate with just one hand. The S24 Ultra is just massive, but it's got all the flagship features, which I'll discuss later. Now, if you look at the displays on the S24 and the S24 Plus, it's a minor bump from the previous generation. So the screen size is slightly bigger. We're talking 6.2 inches versus 6.1 inches on the S24, and then 6.7 inches versus 6.6 inches on the S24 Plus. The bezels are also thinner, and it features a variable refresh rate between 1 to 120 Hertz. And I guess the biggest improvement you're going to notice with these displays is that they're much brighter compared to the previous generation. So with the S24 lineup in general, you can expect to see a pretty massive bump up to 48%, I believe, from 1750 nits in HBM mode to 2600 nits, which is pretty incredible. So you can take this phone outdoors wherever you are on a sunny day and not worry about looking at content because it's a really, really bright display, guys. The battery sizes are also bigger on these phones. So with the S24, you're getting a 4000 milliamp hour battery, which is 100 milliamp hours more than the S23, and the S24 Plus gets a 200 milliamp hour upgrade. Now, both these phones are going to feature Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 SoC paired with 8 or 12 gigabytes of RAM. And from a performance standpoint, you're not going to notice a huge difference compared to the previous generation Galaxy S23 lineup. In fact, what you're going to be noticing is faster AI-based workflows. So for instance, there's a built-in neural processing unit in the SoC that supposedly can process LLM models significantly faster compared to the previous generation. I believe Qualcomm was mentioning up to 98%, which is a huge increment because there is a built-in chip in the SoC. And it's got some other cool features like super resolution upscaling technologies for gaming. So Samsung has basically designed their own software that can take advantage of the NPU for AI-based tasks, which I'll talk about later in the video. Plus, in order to cool the SoC, they've also enhanced and increased the size of the vapor chamber for the S24, the S24 Plus, and the S24 Ultra. The camera setup for the S24 and the S24 Plus is basically a copy and paste from the S23 lineup. Seriously, there's no improvement whatsoever, at least on paper. They're featuring the exact same sensor. So you're getting a triple camera setup with a 12 megapixel ultra wide, 50 megapixel main sensor, and a 10 megapixel telephoto sensor. And these cameras can also shoot 8K video. So yeah, there's nothing really new in the camera department for these phones. And in terms of the pricing, you're looking at $799 for the Galaxy S24, $999 for the Galaxy S24 Plus, which is exactly the same compared to the previous generations. Now moving on to the Galaxy S24 Ultra, again, from a hardware standpoint, you're not going to notice a huge difference from the S23 Ultra. It's just sharper and more bolder looking. And they've also taken a page out of Apple's design by integrating a titanium frame across the chassis. You heard me right. Apple chose to do titanium, and so is Samsung following their footsteps. I mean, we all saw this coming. Now with the Ultra models, you're going to get a few more features that you don't necessarily get with the S24 and the S24 Plus. So the first thing is, of course, the built-in S Pen, which is just a great tool for taking notes and exploring your creativity. You can also use this for signing documents and editing photos. You're also getting a 6.8-inch Quad HD plus 120 Hz LTPO display with a peak brightness level of 2600 nits. So this is probably one of the brightest displays you're going to find in the market right now. You also get a 5000 mAh battery, and the camera setup is fairly the same. So it features a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, and you also get that massive 200 megapixel main sensor. But the biggest difference you're going to notice is in the telephoto department. So on the Galaxy S23 Ultra, you got a 10 megapixel telephoto sensor. On the 24 Ultra, it's actually bumped up to a 50 megapixel telephoto sensor with 5x optical zoom. So that means your photos are going to look much sharper compared to the previous generation, and that's a welcoming bonus because I love shooting telephoto. And these phones are going to come in some tasteful colors like gray, black, violet, and yellow. So with the hardware stuff out of the way, I want to talk a little bit about the software enhancements baked into the Galaxy S24 lineup. Now, a lot of this falls under Galaxy AI, which is an interesting marketing term, but it's essentially based off of an LLM that was developed by Samsung since 2017. And they call it Samsung GAUSS, which is essentially named after a German mathematician. But it's got some really interesting features integrated into some of the native apps like messages, screen recording, and some other applications that we use on a regular basis. So for instance, Chat Assistant essentially translates your chats in different languages. It supports up to 13 languages, and it also allows you to compose text messages with AI. You can also change the tonality of your text messages. So you can start composing something informal and use the assistant to change it into something that's more professional. It also has the ability to check for spelling and grammar. There's also Transcribe Assist, which is baked into the recording app. So this again uses AI to transcribe speech to text, and it can separate up to 8 different speakers. And on top of that, it can also translate the whole recording into a different language. Plus, it can also summarize what each speaker was talking about. I can see this being super useful for students who are recording lectures, or even if you're in a business meeting, you can just record what's happening and just sort of summarize it into a really well-formatted setup, which again is a great productivity feature to have on a smartphone. There's also Note Assist, which once again uses AI. It essentially helps translate, summarize, and streamline notes with pre-made templates or formats. So it'll structure your random notes within a matter of a few seconds, which is pretty cool. And then there's the Circle to Search feature, which was developed in partnership with Google. So the whole idea behind this feature was to cut down on your search time so that you're looking for exactly what you want. So the way how this works is if you long press the home button, it brings up a UI, and all you have to do is just circle, highlight, or tap anything on screen, which will then bring up helpful search results. And the coolest part was that it was able to detect the World Trade Center in New York City in the background of a photo, while it also brings up its location and activities that can be done around the area. I mean, this feature isn't particularly new. We've seen Google implement this on their Pixel smartphones, but it's just Samsung's way of using and utilizing the NPU for just generating these search results at a much faster rate. So yeah, it's a welcoming feature, and I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm probably going to take advantage of a lot of that when I'm traveling. The last thing I want to talk about is some pretty interesting camera editing techniques. So the first thing is instant slow motion. So this is essentially a feature that uses AI to analyze motion and generate additional frames into a 30p video or a 60p video. So for instance, let's say you have a video that was shot in 30 frames per second. You can actually use this particular feature to add more frames to convert that 30p video into a 60 frames per second video. The same thing goes for a 60 frames per second video. You can just use this feature, tap on it, and it'll just automatically, generate frames in between to convert it to a 120 frames per second video, which is really, really interesting. I have to spend a little bit more time testing out this particular feature and seeing how accurate it is and how it actually plays out in full screen. I mean, is it gonna look distorted and all that kind of stuff? I mean, lots of questions still need to be answered, but yeah, instant slow motion, this AI thing is really scary, man. But it doesn't stop there, because there are some AI-assisted editing features baked into the Galaxy S24 lineup. So it can detect objects and also use generative fill to transform the whole photo to something completely different. I mean, it questions the authenticity of a photo, but that's a topic of conversation that needs to be discussed in another time. But yeah, this again isn't anything new. We've seen Google implement this with their Pixel smartphones with Magic Eraser. So this is just Samsung's way of adding some AI sprinkle on their shiny new hardware. So that's the Galaxy S24 lineup for 2024. The one last thing I want to touch base on is the pricing for the Galaxy S24 Ultra. Unfortunately, Samsung decided to jack up the price this year. So we're talking $1299, which is $100 more than the Galaxy S23 Ultra when it was launched last year. And for our Canadians, it's almost $1,800, which is a tough pill to swallow. So my first impressions with the Galaxy S24 lineup is essentially the Galaxy S23 series with a few minor tweaks in the design and some AI features jammed inside software. And that's pretty much it. You're not really paying anything new for the hardware. I don't think the cameras are that big of an improvement this year. Again, we'll have to test it out, but just on paper, it looks like it's pretty much the same. But I want to hear your thoughts on the new series from Samsung. Is it something exciting? I mean, if you are on the verge of upgrading from your S9, S10, S21, you know, is the new S24 lineup appealing to you guys? Let us know in the comments down below. If there's anything particularly interesting that you wanted us to test out with any of these phones, let us know in the comments down below. I'm Eber with Hardware Canucks. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.